Welcome back to Euro Fantasy 2024. This will be a chip strategy guide where I delve into my current plans on when to use the Wildcard and Limitless chips. I also discuss an alternative strategy which kind of goes against the popular tried and tested formula that we've seen in UCL Fantasy, also in the previous Euros tournament, and in World Cup Fantasy only 2 years ago. Smash the like button and subscribe if you're new if you end up enjoying this video or finding useful. And let's get this to over 200 likes overall on YouTube, and let's keep on pushing towards 24,000 subscribers and beyond. There are many links in the description below for my Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM, my Patreon, the Championships Discord server, the Euro Fantasy League, as well as Draft Hound and Spotify. Leave a 5-star review on my podcast. It goes a long way to supporting the channel. But without further ado, let's jump straight into it. To kick things off, I'm going to discuss both chips in detail and talk about the key differences between the two, also discuss transfers and how they work in the group stages compared to the knockouts, and then afterwards I'll start delving into the group stages, the teams with the best fixtures, and then talk about the best times to use the Limitless and the Wildcard. And there are some key details in this video and podcast which will keep you up to date, and you will know everything you need to by match day 1 after watching all of my content. So in terms of the Wildcard, it enables you to make unlimited changes just like it would in FPL or in any other fantasy game you've played like UCL Fantasy and the World Cup. Any players you buy will remain in your squad once that match day has finished. So it's not like a free hit which only lasts for a single match day. The wildcard will last until the very end, and it can only be used once but can be deployed at any time except match days 1 and 4 where we have unlimited transfers already. So you can't use the wildcard or the Limitless chips in those 2 match days, so you're limited to using them in match day 2, 3, 5, 6 or 7. Unlike the Limitless, the wildcard has budget constraints. All hits will be cancelled and the chip is irreversible once you've saved the transfers and confirmed them. Normal rules for substitutions, formations and captaincy still apply. So irrespective of if you're using the wildcard, Limitless or normal transfers, you have to abide by the rules in terms of the subs, formations and also the captaincy. That is the breakdown of the wildcard. If you have any questions, be sure to let me know down in the comment section below. But next up is the Limitless chip, which will be a bit more alien to most of you. But if you have played UCL Fantasy, that chip is in that fantasy format every single season and we'll likely see it in the next campaign as well. Just like the wildcard, the Limitless allows you to make unlimited transfers, but only for a single match day, which is the key difference between both boosters. Once the match day is finished, your squad will go back to how it was before you activate the chip. But the best thing about the Limitless is that there are no budget restrictions whatsoever. As long as you abide by the captaincy rules, the substitutions and the formations, you will be able to have the ideal squad you want and go for the most expensive players in each position, so long as you have 2 goalkeepers, 5 defenders, 5 midfielders and 3 forwards. The booster can only be used once, just like the wildcard, and can be played at any time except match days 1 and 4 where you have unlimited transfers already. All hits you take before activating the Limitless or the wildcard will be cancelled and the chip is irreversible. So pretty much the same thing in a lot of regards compared to the wildcard, but the key difference is that the Limitless only lasts for a single match day whilst the wildcard enforces permanent changes, and with the Limitless you have no budget restrictions whatsoever. Check out my How to Play Euro Fantasy guide, and everything you need to know is covered in that video and podcast, so you'll know all the ins and outs for Euro Fantasy. Both the wildcard and the Limitless can only be played once throughout the entire tournament, and both of them provide unlimited transfers, but the key differences lie in the unlimited budget, where the Limitless provides you that luxury and the wildcard doesn't. And as for the team resets once the match day is over, well, with the wildcard that isn't the case, so the changes are for the long term, whilst with the Limitless it's a 1 match day ploy and it essentially acts like a free hit with no budget restrictions whatsoever. Let me know which chip you prefer, but of course you have to play both of them, and ideally you use both in the group stages. That is the tried and tested formula, which I'll delve into very soon, but there is definitely an alternative strategy in play. But before we do that, let's talk about the transfers and how they operate in the knockouts compared to the group stages. Similar to UCL Fantasy, you can roll transfers here in the Euros, but only in the group stages, and you can stack up to 3 free transfers in this time frame. But then when we go into the knockout stages, you cannot roll transfers over at any point, and you'll have 3 transfers for the quarterfinals, 4 transfers for the semi-finals, and 5 for the final. And of course, for the round of 16, we have unlimited transfers in match day 4. No free transfers are carried forward after activating the wildcard or the Limitless chip, and for every transfer you make beyond your quota of free transfers, you'll be deducted 4 points from your total, just like in FPL, UCL Fantasy, World Cup Fantasy, and any fantasy game you've pretty much played. Fewer transfers are granted in the group stages compared to the knockouts, only 2 per match day in the groups compared to 3, 4, and 5 in the latter stages of the tournament, and this reinforces the popular chip strategy of using the wildcard and Limitless chips early on, especially with some easier fixtures. And I'll talk about the pros and cons, of course, of both the OG strategy and an alternative one, which could see the wildcard saved for Matchday 5. Here is another table to show you how many transfers you have at each stage of the competition. So we're currently at the stage where the tournament hasn't begun yet. So we have unlimited transfers heading into Matchday 1. Once that begins, we get 2 transfers per matchday, and you can roll the transfer and have up to 3 transfers and no more. Then for the round of 16 in Matchday 4, we have unlimited transfers once again, and for the quarterfinals we get 3 free transfers, for the semi-finals we get 4 transfers, and for the Euros final we get 5 overall, just like in UCL Fantasy. And in that format we have 13 matches, or we did in the original Champions League format. In the Euros you only have 7 match days overall, and the same goes for World Cup Fantasy as well. But that is the transfer table, and now let's move on to some of the strategies that could really help you in Euro Fantasy. It's important to memorize the groups if possible and see which of the top teams have favourable fixtures. And if you look at the FDR, Portugal have the best fixtures in the group stages, facing Czech Republic in Matchday 1, Turkey in Matchday 2, and they round off the group stages with Georgia. Then you're looking at the likes of England, Germany, Belgium and France with the next set of favourable fixtures, and they're expected to win probably 2 of those 3 matches, keeping 1 or 2 clean sheets in the process. And you look at England, they have Serbia, Denmark and Slovenia, and Germany have Scotland, Hungary and Switzerland, which is favoured by the FDR, but it's not necessarily a good set of fixtures. I think Hungary are quite underrated, and Switzerland can give the best of teams problems, but Germany have that home advantage as the Euros is hosted in Germany, and I think they could be one of the dark horses of this tournament. Belgium have Slovakia, Romania and Ukraine, and to be honest, I'd probably rank Belgium slightly higher than Germany in terms of fixture difficulty. Then you've got France, who have Austria, Netherlands and Poland, and it's that Matchday 2 fixture against the Netherlands which kind of lets them down. As for Spain, they have Croatia, Italy and Albania. Netherlands have Poland, France and Austria, and then you've got Italy with Albania, Spain and Croatia. And then Croatia themselves, who are quite underrated, they've got Spain, Albania and Italy. And kind of a common pattern we're seeing here is that in Matchday 2, a lot of these top teams have difficult fixtures. There are some exceptions, of course. I would argue that Portugal have a favourable one in Turkey. Then you have England against Denmark. Not the easiest of games, but you'd still fancy England to win that match. Then you have Germany against Hungary. Despite how underrated they are, you'd still expect Germany to win that with the home advantage. You have Belgium against Romania. So there are some top teams with good fixtures in Matchday 2. You just don't have that many choices on paper, and you could even go for a Serbia against Slovenia or Czech Republic against Georgia. There are opportunities there to use the Limitless or the wildcard in Matchday 2 and see some very big scores there, and I'll discuss some of the reasons why I think using both chips in the group stages could be the best play once again in Euro Fantasy. As I mentioned earlier, using both chips in the group stages is a tried and tested formula in Euro, World Cup and UCL Fantasy. For example, this season, and remember Champions League has 13 match days, not 7, so it's a longer format. I used both chips in the group stages and still finished 837th in the world, and I had a very good platform in the knockouts. I made some good transfers using the unlimited changes in Matchday 7 in that case, and if you can get things spot on, of course, and it's a big if to be fair, you can be well set up by using unlimited transfers in Matchdays 1 and 4 and using the chips early on and essentially building free hit teams for the group stages and having an optimized squad for every single match day there. And weaker teams can be targeted in the group phase. You don't have that same luxury in the knockouts, and during that stage you have fewer high scoring games, more competitive matches and lower scoring affairs generally. You can see some 0-0s, maybe some 1-0s or 1-1s. You go all the distance in extra time and penalties penalties, and games are very competitive from that perspective. A lot of the big scores and hauls from individual players and teams will definitely come in the group stages. This shorter format of 7 match days also makes it crucial to get off to a strong start, and that's why using both chips so early on could actually lay the foundations for success, and you've already got the points in the bag, and afterwards it's about kind of securing that high finish between match days 4 to 7. You can probably tell by the way I've gone on about it throughout the entire video and podcast. My current chip strategy is to use both boosters in the group stages, the Limitless in Matchday 2 and the Wildcard in Matchday 3, but that's interchangeable. It could be the Limitless in Matchday 3 as you have more top teams having great fixtures, but at the same time there's more rotation in Matchday 3, and whatever you do, if you decide to use the wildcard later in the competition, I think that's absolutely fine, and there are definitely some pros to doing so. But no matter what your chip strategy is, my recommendation is to use the Limitless in the group stages because you have the weakest teams to target, and when we go into Matchday 4, you have a 5 million increase in budget, so it's easier to kind of build the ideal squad regardless. So I always think the Limitless is stronger in the group stages because of that 5 million increase you get in budget for Matchday 4. You also have tougher fixtures in the knockout stages, and yes, you might learn more about certain players and the best teams as you go deeper into the competition, but I just think the pros outweigh the cons, and no matter what you do, use the Limitless in the group stages. With this alternative strategy, you would use the Limitless in either Matchday 2 or 3, and that's ultimately team dependent, and it might even depend on some of your preferences, and the wildcard would be used in Matchday 5, potentially in Matchday 6 or 7, but I probably wouldn't recommend using it in Matchday 7 unless you are really happy with your team as you go through the competition, and then in Matchday 7, it actually might help you to set up for the Euros final. That's completely fine, and having that wildcard in your back pocket can allow you to go for some differentials in the knockout stages and also go for some riskier picks, and you might even go for players from teams you expect to be eliminated in the round of 16 or the quarterfinals, but you've got that wildcard as an insurance policy. So I certainly don't mind using the wildcard in Matchday 5, and I'm still open to doing that. But one thing that's kind of locked in for me is using the Limitless in either Matchday 2 or 3. That's pretty much locked in. Then for the wildcard, it's probably going to be either Matchday 2, 3 or 5. And at the moment, of course, you see my chip strategy, you know what my current thinking is. But Matchday 5 wildcard can't be underestimated, especially when you look at the fixtures and how they've panned out. In terms of Matchday 2, it doesn't look great for most top teams, but there are still some decent games in there, in my opinion, and some very high scores to be found. To conclude this chip strategy video and podcast, here's another comparison table. On the left hand side, you can see my current chip strategy, which is to use both chips early, and on the right hand side, saving the wildcard for Matchday 5. So you can target the weakest teams and earn high scores in the group stages, but Matchday 2 fixtures aren't particularly appealing for the best nations, at least the vast majority of them. Euro Fantasy is a short format, so getting off to a strong start is crucial, but you can build a better wildcard team later in the competition as you identify the best players and teams, certain trends, and learn more information about Euro Fantasy and also the best options in the game. Now, the wildcard or Limitless can help you tackle rotation in Matchday 3, but this rotation can be unpredictable even with these chips being activated, and it could lead to one of those boosters being wasted. Now, you can optimize your squad for Matchdays 1 to 3 with essentially free hit squads by using the wildcard and Limitless in Matchdays 2 or 3, but there are more match days in the knockouts, and some managers will take point hits in that stage of the competition. Now, there are more transfers in the knockout stages, so if you do get certain things wrong, you have a lot of eliminated players, you have a bit more wiggle room to make some errors compared to the group stages where you only have 2 transfers per match day. But of course, in the group stages, no matter what happens, you will always have that insurance policy of no eliminated players until Matchday 4, where you have unlimited transfers. So there is obviously some pros and cons there. Now, there is a risk of having multiple eliminated players, and the wildcard can bail you out. And as I mentioned just a few minutes ago, it also allows you to go for some differentials and pick players from teams you expect to be eliminated, but you back that player to do well in, let's say, Matchday 3 or 4, and then they'll probably get eliminated, but you do get the points in the process before their country is out of the tournament. And finally, manual substitutions aren't important in Matchday 7 for the Euros final, and that's a key point, and that also plays into using both chips early because a lot of people will be kind of bogged down to having a full 50-man squad for the rest of the tournament, and I always encourage that, but that isn't so relevant in Matchday 7. You only need 11 players for that matchday. If you play UCL Fantasy, for example, you would have witnessed that for Matchday 13 in the Champions League final. You can't make manual substitutions, you can't change the captaincy. In every other stage of the competition between Matchdays 1 to 6 in the Euros, you can make subs and change the captain, but you can't do this in Matchday 7, and that's why saving the wildcard or limitless for Matchday 7 doesn't really have that much importance, and it's easier to build a starting 11 and having your favourite players for the Euros final. And that essentially concludes most of the key points in terms of using both chips early or saving the wildcard for Matchday 5. And of course, another point would be the extra 5 million in budget, which does play into using both chips earlier, especially the limitless, because it's kind of easier to build your ideal 50-man squad in Matchday 4 using unlimited transfers. And you can also build quite a lot of team value from Matchday 3 and beyond when the price changes start to happen. By the end of this chip strategy video and podcast, you would have learned everything you need to about how both chips work, also the transfers in the knockout stages compared to the group stages, and also what tends to work in UCL Fantasy, Euro Fantasy, and World Cup Fantasy, which are all identical to each other and different from FPL. You can see the league code on screen on YouTube, JCRHjQ. There is an auto-join link in the description below, whether you're on Spotify, Patreon, or YouTube. But thank you very much for all your support. It's genuinely much appreciated. If you enjoyed this or found it useful, then be sure to smash the like button and subscribe if you're new. Let's get this video to over 200 likes and let's keep on pushing towards 24,000 subscribers and beyond. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM, and check all the other links in the description below for my Patreon, the Championships Discord server, Euro Fantasy League Draft Hound, as well as Spotify. Leave a 5-star review on my podcast. It goes a long way to supporting the channel. I wish you all the best of luck for Matchday 1 and the rest of the Euros tournament, and I'll see you next time.